Governor Kathy Hochul has stepped back from an initiative that would have left North Country schools at risk of losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in state aid. 7 News reporter Lexi Bruning has the latest.
Education is going to be the centerpiece of this year's legislative session.
A big year for education after Governor Kathy Hochul steps back from a proposed change that would have affected how much funding North Country schools receive.
I'm optimistic. I think we're starting in a good place this year.
Last year, Governor Kathy Hochul proposed a change to the state's foundation aid formula, the way Albany figures out how much money a school district gets from the state. It would eliminate what is called a hold harmless provision, which protects schools from seeing a cut in funding based on the previous year's funding. Jefferson Louis Bosey Superintendent Stephen Todd says that would take away any predictability and stability schools rely on.
When you have a situation where you can't predict or where you're seeing sharp ups and downs in year-to-year funding, that can be very, very difficult for any organization, including a school district.
Now it's looking like that may be off the table. In a statement to 7 News, a spokesperson for Governor Kathy Hochul's office says the governor believes the state should avoid proposals that would negatively impact school budgets, such as eliminating the hold harmless provision.
We should just take it on a slow approach and implement it over time.
Gray says that's what a recent study from the Rockefeller Institute of Government seems to do. The more than 300-page report studies the foundation aid formula requested by the state last year. State lawmakers will look over those recommendations during session.
The list of options that they proposed in their study to reform the foundation aid study are based upon the hopes of creating predictability and stability and equity and sustainability, these are things that we all want.
Legislative session begins January 7th. Lexi Bruning, 7 News.